We will now take a look at a different perspective of AI, and so many of us have tried to use it. What is the state of play of autonomous driving, and to which extent is it common on the road? We will now try to find the answers. The keynote speaker is Mark Roberts from Capgemini. Mark, welcome to our meeting.
Hi, thank you everyone. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. My name is Mark Roberts. I am a principal technologist within Capgemini Engineering. I've been involved in the field of AI for over 25 years now, and that's taken me through multiple waves of hype, and that gives me quite a unique perspective on what's going on in the field at the moment. So today I want to give a focus and some sort of deeper understanding to the topics related to AI in autonomous driving. So let me start with a statement. This statement, cars will be 90% capable of autopilot soon, that was made in 2014 by Elon Musk. Just another year later, in 2015, he said basically the same thing. And actually, if you look at the press releases, pretty much every year for the last 10 years, Elon Musk has made the same statement about full autonomous driving being just around the corner. So I put these statements here not to make fun of Elon Musk, but actually to show that even someone who's very smart, very well informed, and has multi-billion-dollar R&D budgets at their disposal can still fall into this trap of thinking that AI is much closer than it really is. And if we look at what we mean by autonomous driving, so in that previous quote, Elon Musk mentioned having L4 capabilities next year. This is an abstraction of an industry standard description of autonomous driving levels, starting with level 0 with nothing, and L5 where there's no driver in the car at all. Now, most autonomous vehicles that people talk about now are actually only at level 2 on this scale. Even the Tesla autopilot system is classed as a level 2 system. And as far as I'm aware, there's only one level 3 system on the road at the moment, which is a Mercedes system. So we're still quite a long way from the full autonomous driving that people talk about. And in fact, a lot of the car companies are looking to jump straight from level 2 to level 4 to go for more complete levels of autonomy sooner rather than later. But we're still quite a long way from that. If we look at what the current state is at the moment, we're actually seeing a lot of accidents still. We're seeing a lot of autonomous vehicles being involved in collisions. And you might say, well, human drivers have collisions as well. Human drivers crash all the time, and that's absolutely true. And they crash more than autonomous vehicles. The problem is at the moment is that a lot of the failures that we're seeing with autonomous vehicles are actually really silly mistakes. These autonomous vehicles are making mistakes that no human would ever make. So, for example, one of the first tragically fatal collisions with an autonomous vehicle was a case where the car's camera systems saw a big white truck, but mistook it for the sky and tried to drive straight through it. And that's a mistake that no human would ever make. We don't mistake vehicles for the sky. And it's this type of error that actually is the root cause of why we don't have confidence in these systems at the moment. Even though they work most of the time, it's these bad failures that give us reason to mistrust them. So let's dig into what we mean when we talk about success in an AI system, because I think that helps us to answer the question of where we are and where we're going with autonomous vehicles. So to take a completely different example, I want you to just imagine this scenario. And this is a real system. There's a system that was created a few years ago to classify tissue samples as to whether they are benign and non-cancerous or malignant and cancerous. This new system achieves 85% accuracy. In fact, if you use it in a certain way, it's 99% accurate. So I guess my question to you in the audience, and I wish I was there to see the answers, would you trust this system to analyze your lab results, 85 or 99% accurate? I think most people would say, yes, it is. That's trustworthy. Unfortunately, you definitely should not trust this system, because this system is just a bird in a box that's pecking at the screen. These birds have been trained to detect the difference between cancerous and non-cancerous images, and they do it very well when you only look at accuracy. But of course, we do not trust this system because it's a bird, because it's unreliable. We don't know how it does it. I mean, it's very impressive that it can do it, but still, that's not enough to trust it, right? It's not reliable, it's not robust, it can get distracted. We don't know how it's solving the problem, so therefore we can't tell how it will behave in other situations. So I guess that the main point I want to make here is that being accurate is not enough, especially when you're talking about a safety critical system like an autonomous vehicle. I mean, just imagine this scenario shown on the slide here. Imagine this archer with the bow here. He says, hey, I hit these shots 99.9% of the time. Would you put your child there with the apple on their head? I know I wouldn't. So even though the accuracy is high, in a safety critical system, you're not judged by the 99.9% of correct cases. You're judged by how badly you fail or how well you fail on the 1% or the 0.1% of cases where things go wrong. So if we look at what's happening in the industry at the moment, there is this recognition that the old way of doing machine learning and AI was all about maximizing accuracy. So in the case of an autonomous vehicle, maximizing its ability to recognize the scene and identify the different parts of the scene in front of it. And that gave us a false sense of security because, as we've said, accuracy is not what we need. The problem with accuracy is the only way to get more of it is to have more and more data and more computation power to build bigger and bigger machine learning models. Now, that's not really worth it. That becomes unsustainable. It's not very good for the environment. And actually, you will never solve the problem that way. You just use more and more power for diminishing returns, and you get a slightly smaller increase in your percentage accuracy. What we need now is trustable AI. We don't need accurate AI. We need trustable AI that we have faith in. And the way we do that is not by using more and more data, but by actually using less data. We're using more simplistic models of context. And what I mean by that is creating AI systems that understand the world, understand and are able to reason about the world. And as a specific example, if you take me as a human driver, you could put me in any car, anywhere in the world, on strange roads that I've never seen before, maybe in strange weather conditions that I've never driven in before, and I will still be able to drive safely. And that's because I've learned the general concepts of driving. I've learned the general model of how the world works, how physics works, how gravity works, how motion works, how other drivers behave. Those are the things you really need in order to be able to drive safely in unknown environments. And the types of systems that we have now are based on, let's try and show it everything and hope that it never sees anything that it hasn't seen before. And that's just never going to work. So context is where we really need to get to. And when you look at AI through that lens, you realize that there are many other aspects of correctness that we need to think about when we're dealing with AI. So most people only really think about accuracy. But certainly when we think about AI systems now in the engineering space, especially in the safety critical space, we think of all of these other things and many more. And I think this diagram is a really nice reminder that success in an AI system is about more than just accuracy. You need all of these things to really have confidence in an AI solution. Especially some of the things on the right-hand side about humility, having systems that know what they don't know and are able to extrapolate sensibly beyond things that they've seen already. Those are the key things that we need for autonomous vehicles. So just as a few examples of what we mean by context here. So here's a few examples of cars that are failing to understand context. And No, all of these images are from Teslas, and again, I really don't want to pick on Tesla. The reason I have examples is because they're much further ahead than everyone else. So this is not a criticism of Tesla in particular. So here's an image here. Hopefully you can see on the screen there. This car is detecting a yellow traffic light, an orange traffic light in front of it, and you can imagine if it was in full autonomous mode, it might then apply the brakes to slow the car down. Now, unfortunately, there's no traffic light there. What it's detecting, hopefully you can see it on the in the sky. That's the moon. And again, this is a mistake that humans would not make, because we understand what a traffic light is. We understand that a traffic light is not just the presence of a yellow light. It's a yellow light next to a red light and a green light, and it stands on a pole, and it doesn't hover that far in the sky. We understand the context of the world, which enables us to interpret the scene better. This one is detecting trucks, lorries passing in front of it, which is actually a train. And I guess this is not a bad mistake, because it's not going to make a bad decision here. But it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the scene in front of it. Again, a mistake that no human would ever make. This one of my favorites, quickly, Burger King. Apparently, to some Teslas, in some situations, a Burger King sign looks like a stop sign. So in this example, the customer was driving down the road, down a motorway at speed, and the system misunderstood what it was seeing and tried to stop for the Burger King sign. Now, that could be quite a dangerous situation here, where it's you're going at speed down the highway. But again, it's something that, with proper context, you would never make that mistake, because we know there are no stop signs on the highway. We know the rules of the world and the rules of the road that allow us to pass that scene differently. And finally, just a video version of this. You can see in the car here, hopefully this is working over the remote connection. This car thinks that traffic lights are being thrown towards it from the vehicle in front. And this comes from, again, a fundamental misinterpretation of the scene. It's correctly detected traffic lights, but it just can't handle the fact that traffic lights are sitting on top of a moving vehicle. And it makes some fundamental misunderstandings about the context of the scene that's happening. So this is what I mean by context being important. So how can we get to where we want to be with autonomous driving? So the first thing, as I've mentioned, trustable AI is crucial. It's not just about accurate AI. We need trustworthy AI. And unfortunately, we are constantly falling into the trap of thinking that this is easier than it really is. And that's because the first 90% of this problem is way easier than the last 10% of it. It was so easy to get this first bit done that we're tricked into thinking that the second bit will be much easier. Strategies that are based purely on experiencing lots of things and lots of training data are not going to succeed, because there will always be things that the vehicle hasn't seen. You could spend years and years and billions of euros of R&D money showing your system everything, but within a few minutes on the road, it will see something that it has never seen before. So trustable AI is crucial, and the route to do that is through more contextual models of the world. Second, I think increasingly it's becoming obvious that we can't just jump straight to the final solution here. We need to do more work on more controlled environments. So we're seeing some of the big successes at the moment in autonomous vehicles are on more restricted environments, maybe more restricted roads where they're not having to compete with normal traffic. Third, collective perception. This is one of the obvious things we need to do at some point. When all of our cars are autonomous, it really doesn't make sense for them to be working independently of each other. They all have great sensors. They all have good connectivity. They can all help to solve the collective problem of getting everyone where they need to go faster. Even the environment, the sensors built into the buildings, the streets, the traffic lights, they can all contribute to this as well. And finally, I think one of the most important things here is regulation. I mean, regulation is so important for trust in systems generally. So I always use the example that I don't know how pilots are trained or how aircraft engineers are trained, but I happily get onto planes because I trust that the regulator knows what they're doing. And through strong regulation, we're able to build trust in our systems. So I think whereas some people might see regulations as being in the way, I'm very much of the view that regulation is important in this case, partly to make sure we have safe systems, but also to just make sure that we bring the public along with us on this journey. So briefly, just to mention a few things that we in Capgemini are doing in this space, we're working with a lot of the world's biggest universities on these exact problems. So with MIT, we're working with them to develop new forms of explainable AI, so that specifically for autonomous vehicles, so that when we build AI into a vehicle and want to validate it, we can validate it using human interpretable features and using rules that we can understand, so that our regulators and others can make sure that it's doing the right thing and that it's learned the right concepts. The second, with Oxford University here, we're looking at more of the psychological aspects of this, figuring out what language do we need to use, how do we need to communicate with the users of these autonomous systems to make sure that they have trust in the system and they know the limits of that system. So these sorts of things are crucial to building our understanding here. So just to finish, just a final thought. Where are we? I still think, I firmly believe that autonomous vehicles are coming quite soon. I don't believe they're coming as soon as Elon Musk thinks they are. He still thinks it's next year. Fundamentally, we have this situation where the last 10% of this problem is going to be much, much harder than the first 90% of the problem. And it will probably be many years still before we see fully autonomous vehicles on the road. I would encourage you, and I know there's a panel session just after this, to think about this as a holistic problem. It's not just a problem of accuracy of those systems. It's a problem of how do we get society on board with this? How do we ensure that we have regulations that support the trustworthiness of these systems? So with that, I'll finish. I think I'm a little bit over time, but I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. E agora, feita esta introdução, seguimos.
And now, let's move on to the debate.
Muito boa tarde. Tivemos aqui insights muito interessantes.
Good afternoon. We've had very interesting insights in the previous panels, and in particular in this one. It was very interesting to see that technology experts that autonomous cars will be available next year, but or maybe it will take some more time. And it was also said that being in the car in safety is very important. So we have a very interesting panel to discuss these topics that I will introduce now. So we have the president of the National Road Safety Authority, Rui Ribeiro. He also has an academic experience. He is a professor at Philp since 2002. He did his graduation in Técnico and PhD in Coimbra. So this is a very brief presentation, but there's more. He also leads technical studies, developing standards, namely CEN and ISO. He's also very active in this field, and he has over 60 scientific publications. And is also responsible for road safety. So it's a pleasure to have you here discussing these topics. We also have remotely the mayor, Paulo Fernandes, the mayor of Fundão.
That's the local.
Olá, boa tarde, Sr. Presidente. Passando aqui bocadinho a sua biografia.
So, has a degree in international relations from ICSWA, has a master's with a specialization in regional and local development, and this is the topic he'll be addressing. That is how we put into practice technology in an inclusive way in the territory. Fundão has won international national prizes over the years related to inclusion and diversity, and in May was awarded a prize from Brussels regarding inclusion and diversity. So we have with this panel, we have aspects relating to these different factors to speak about inclusion and diversity, or road safety, regional development, and there are some examples of some things that are detected by cars. It's a question of time. And now, what's important to sum up, we have autonomous driving and we need confidence. We need tests, regulatory framework. And in July 2022, the EU published a regulation which allows autonomous cars, fully autonomous, to travel in highways at 120 kilometers an hour. This information is interesting because now we can travel in autonomous cars. Now, let's start with a question to break the ice. Mayor Paul Fernandes, Marx mentioned Dove in terms of medical diagnosis. Would you trust that Dove? And how Fundão is preparing itself for that impact? That is, how do you see the impact of autonomous vehicles in your municipality, and how's Fundão preparing itself? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation address. I would like to thank the organization and wish you very productive work. And indeed, APDC has shown that mobility is an important moment, and this transition to towards an autonomous one is will hopefully be done in the short term. I was listening to Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, living in from a village not far from Fundão, and he spoke about the need of a diplomatic arsenal to solve all conflicts, and the greatest one being the war in Ukraine, being invaded by Russia. I dare to say that I don't know if I would trust a Dove, but maybe an army of doves of peace, and with accuracy, maybe we could predict this with that army of doves of peace and could predict the end of this dramatic war. So when we address such a big challenge, and this is to go into the second question, we could be called on to play a role. Mobility is crucial in the world, and mobility has brought connectivity. 5G connectivity will cause a second revolution in terms of many aspects, and we've been all called on, like territories like ours, 750 square kilometers, to work as a test. And what I see is the possibility of being in the forefront to accelerate the digital ecosystems, and to be able to have real interfaces in areas which are quite relevant, such as remote management, 5G, and software related to software, which and also batteries in smart parks. That is all connected to this mobilizing program. And also, there's an interesting question in terms of the diversity use of autonomous vehicles. There's something which is quite interesting, that is the high density as being a challenge, but also in terms of low density. Many challenges in terms of use. Maybe the more inclusive aspect, as you've mentioned, can be an area where in the follow-up of this positioning could be more developed. And with such, in a collaborative way, and we have larger enterprises of our ecosystem, one of the largest, Capgemini, from a digital point of view, can boost this trend in terms of value created.
Thank you, Maya. Now, Rui Ribeiro. I'll be provocative, but in a different way. We were talking a few days back about this. Would you trust the pigeon if you open the hood?
E a outra pergunta é,
And the National Road Safety Authority is so committed in developing road safety, and you have a campaign now. Fatima Segura is important for all. So, is autonomous driving going to happen next year? How do you see the role of your authority in this evolution? First, I must thank Elon Musk, but I would like to correct the following. My publications in the academic field are not related with autonomous driving. Regarding the pigeon, yes, our past clearly shows that we depend upon pigeons.
Por exemplo, tenho pombal perto de casa. E a coisa corre.
Some pigeons do their best, some don't. And usually that's the survival of the fittest. And they don't make the same mistake twice. And that's when they land and they are eaten by dogs. So there's a potential for learning regarding pigeons and courier pigeons. As the keynote speaker said, we cannot think of this as being failure-proof. We must believe that machine learning, AI, will make mistakes, but it's only natural. What is not natural is that they make the same mistake twice or repeatedly. And unlike what we read today, and even the pigeons who are not eaten by dogs, they will not land on the same spot where dogs are twice. So these vehicles, increasingly automated, do not make the same mistakes. And I cannot say the same about humans. And we have 600-something people dying in Portugal every year. Another number get injured because of repeated mistakes. This represents 3% of the GDP for all of us, taxpayers. And the question I can give you back is, aren't we going to trust more what is automated? For example, in mechanics, we trust, and I like to talk about autonomous vehicles, and I say, I want to go there, and the autonomous vehicle says, no, because I'm autonomous, I will go in a different direction. So we have automated mechanisms that we are used to them. When I learned how to drive, I would press the ABS button, and it caused a certain impression. My foot would kind of twiggle. And the ABS helps us driving, and we didn't make a fuss out of that. Now let's go back to pigeons. There's a colleague of mine in the authority, someone with a good sense of humor. He used to say, we need to go back to the old system, because in the old days, people trusted animals. We trusted horses because we trusted the horse would not go against the tree, would not fall. And then we started having the competence to take care of the machines that take us from point A to point B. We need to trust something again. Like when we go into the subway, it's fully automated, or in an airplane where the level of automation is quite high. The landing should be done tendentially in an automated way, but there's someone behind or in the plane that takes care of things when something goes wrong. And for example, confusing a Burger King stop sign. I believe this was sponsored by Burger King, but this is something that can easily be solved if I'm driving the car, and the car will learn the next time. And I don't know what my reaction will be if I am driving in Lisbon and suddenly there's an elephant in front of me. This has never happened, so I don't know what my reaction will be. And I need to be prepared so that a vehicle with a certain level of automation doesn't know what to do either. So I believe that all this is here to stay. One thing are autonomous vehicles, and this concept of autonomous is something far away from us as we perceive something that is autonomous in the common language. So increasingly, we have automated aid that helps us to automate some of the skills we have to drive a car. That's an excellent point, and that leads us to consider the following. We have autonomous vehicles. The Road Safety Authority helps citizens to adopt these autonomous vehicles. There's a shift in mentalities, but they need to be tested, and there will be a transition period. Now, going back to the mayor of Fundão, testing in real environments is something that needs to be done. I have doubts, says the mayor. And the moderator continues, are you interested in this? Can you share your thoughts with us? That's an excellent question.
There's it was as such when we started with our innovation plan. This was being disseminated throughout the European space in terms of accreditation certification, and we thought that we should move forward at that time as a model of what could be the this creation and less likely digital context. We started with 3 or 4 computer engineers in a city of 3,000, 4,000, but moving towards an approach as with more real context. We positioned our territory, this capital, the capital, which is a good starting point to say such, as well as other critical mass models. This was a factor which was absolutely vital. And after, we already used the Living Lab model, more specialized, more general, in terms of testing perspective in a real context in the agrotech tier. We started with demos, tests, open to the international market, and we understood that there was another question when we're speaking about more advanced TRLs. Quite often, there's a second death valve. Many of the ideas, what is almost ready to be transferred, that there be a technological transfer, no place in price context, possibility to interconnect the customer in terms of agrotech. We joined farmers and technologists, and therefore this mix brought about much better solutions and did something which was to accelerate or avoid nonsense.
And something for any reason, either a market-related reason or a technological reason, doesn't make sense. And we are not very used to this in Portugal. And the real context needs us to consider different ways forward. And this is also very relevant in order to be efficient. So this is how we position ourselves in this agility agenda. A territory like ours, with very well-defined seasons, with highways, with forests, with complex orography, with all this complexity and diversity, it might help. And also facilitating the connections with technological scientific matters and companies that adopt technology. And also today we see the living lab component for these technological free zones. And you have in the panel those who can also talk about the relevance of having the regulatory entities on the forefront, especially when we're going into uncharted waters. That was exactly the bridge I wanted to establish now. Thank you. So what is the role of ANSR, the National Road Safety Authority? I would like to add the following. When we talked about ANSR incentivizing, we are responsible for the planning and coordination of government policies for road safety. And as we all know, we are also responsible for the compliance with the road traffic code. ANSR, this National Road Safety Authority, is present in all international fora, and with our contributions, and we were among the first 7-8 countries that adopted the Vienna Convention, that includes the amendment for autonomous driving. We are also working in the UN group, and we were also the coordinators of a national working group to promote the testing of autonomous vehicles in our roads. This has not been published yet, but it will. And we know it is highly probable that Portugal will not be a manufacturer of cars, but it can be a country where these autonomous vehicles can be tested as well as their components. And this audience knows that this is a driving force of technology and also knowledge. And we were the leaders of this working group that promoted the regulatory context for these activities. It has not yet been published, but it is about to be published. And we do our job, and then the lawmaker must also do their job. So those are good news. Well, these have been good news for several years anyway. So now let's continue in this famous recovery and resilience plan. There's also Route 25, and the Fundão municipality plays a very specific role. And I would like to ask you, Mayor, what are you expecting to attain at the end of this project? Well, in Route 25, we have several demos, if not mistaken, 5 that will be developed from here. Some can take advantage of our urban space and the interconnection with our remote network using 5G and also management in remote areas, and also what we can call the more urban part, of the urban design of the city, intelligent parks, and also the development of battery systems and their connection with the urban space, regarding the urban organization of the city. So this is a testing field. It can also be in the future a demonstration field, because this will attract more knowledge and more intensive capital to follow down this road of technological development. This is also upgrades and systems to qualify the reality, the urban reality, the interaction, interconnection with the citizen in a city that you can go about in a couple of minutes. So it's a hub. And these approaches are very interesting and also well integrated and very holistic. At the end of the day, if within this cluster, this is a true cluster that is being formatted, helping also the development of the autonomy of vehicles, if some of these aspects in terms of interface can be developed on a more permanent basis, is a competitiveness driver for our country, region, and for my municipality. And this is an advantage that we cannot disregard in view of the near future. So I see that you're also concerned with the ecosystem. And now let's talk about things that are very practical. If an autonomous vehicle doesn't stop at the red light, or if it is speeding, who pays the fine? The driver, the owner of the vehicle, or the designer, manufacturer of the vehicle? How will the ANSR deal with this? Well, this is a kind of funny question. If I had the answer to this question, it would save a lot of work to my colleagues working in international groups, working groups. What happens is that the current framework is based upon two conventions that are slightly older than I am. That's the Geneva and Vienna Conventions, and all the focus on the responsibility of the vehicle on the road is on the driver. And it will no longer be like this. Now, when we link these automated driving systems, if you link to an automated driving system, when is there a transition between the responsibility of the driver and this automated system? Will it be shared? Will it be only the responsibility of the driver, or of an entity that doesn't have legal entity? For the payment of a fine, it's delicate, it's a sensitive topic. It has been discussed, researched by legal people, insurers. At the moment, I don't know. Today, a vehicle that doesn't stop at a red light or is speeding receives a letter signed by me. You know who's signing it. It's not the state. It's not something undifferentiated. You're paying that fine to me, to someone with this face. But we need to identify who the driver is, which vehicle, who's the owner of the vehicle, and the driver. And this is an issue for today and for the future. And that's related with the, I don't know how many millions we need to solve, and it will be soon solved. I'm not as optimistic as Elon Musk, but it will have to be solved. Let me follow up on this. So I realize it's important to identify who's responsible for the offense. But this, as far as I could understand, is not well solved. It's being discussed. There are international fora, namely in law universities, The issue of vehicles with automated systems give me an assurance. I expect them not to speed and to cross red lights. So this problem is solved upstream. But if there's an accident, we need to define who will be responsible. So these are futuristic questions, but you're already working on this. So it has not yet been put in practice. Well, in order to avoid surprises, you should anticipate the future. Now we have 1 minute for your answers. Mayor Paulo Fernandes, a very quick question. When we have in Portugal the first autonomous vehicle that doesn't have
Veículo? Ou vai esperar que isto esteja tudo...
doesn't have a steering wheel or brakes, will it be in Fundão, the first car? I don't know if we will be the first ones to have these vehicles, but obviously we may be better prepared to make good choices regarding the vehicles that may be available in the market. What I also expect is that we are able to have a better interoperational perspective, and that's critical. And very often, if we connect different issues, we can win the technology challenge and also what concerns the laws and all other components, such as the environmental challenge. I was thinking, for example, how autonomous electrical vehicles and the circular economies and carbon issues, all this, how can we link all these dots? Or the relationship between the practical life of people and the true digital neighborhoods that are available, and also the connection with the recovery and resilience plan, and also the collaborative models. Sometimes it's not in technology, but social innovation, so that our businesses and collaboration processes will bring about all this dynamism. And when one day we can sit down in a vehicle like this, these approaches are also present. And we can be fortunate in this experience. And there are less risks that those mentioned. But above all, that we may be connected with all the other dimensions in our day-to-day lives. So, our last question. What is the key message you want to leave with us? We've only been here half an hour, but what is the key message that you would like to get across regarding the adoption of these vehicles and how things will develop?
Concerning vehicles with increasing autonomy, despite our physical, mental status of being able to drive somewhere, automated vehicles is also a question of social inclusion. We are entitled to do something as such. We should trust systems when they're designed to be intrinsically safe. They are safe by default. I'm not saying that the airline system is 100% reliable, but it's designed to be safe. A system like the railway system has the equivalent of 3 airplanes crashing a year. Of 3 airplane crashes, it has been designed to be intrinsically safe. We need to use the good practices and make it into a safe system. We cannot tolerate road accidents, the consequences of accidents on the road, and also with increasing automation, the intrinsically systems which are compulsory, that will clearly help that road accidents is no longer the first cause of death between those that are 24 and 29 years old, and represents such a high and represents so much money. And for instance, in the Portuguese case, our young people should no longer die on the roads. It's unthinkable. We cannot tolerate this fact. I would like to thank the members of the panel to answer questions about pigeons, dove, and difficult questions. Now we're going to introduce it in the hinterland, in more remote areas. Good afternoon, thank you, and see you soon.